Ninja Gaiden is a video game series I've always been interested in trying out, and with the anticipated release of Ninja Gaiden 4, I figured now would be the perfect time to play the modern iteration of these games, and eventually, the entire series. So today we're going to be discussing my experience with the first game I played, Ninja Gaiden Black on the original Xbox. I know this technically isn't the original version of the first game, but it was the one that was recommended to me as the definitive Ninja Gaiden 1 experience. Because of this, I had people in my chat who only played Sigma tell me in real time when something was different from what they experienced, which was a pretty cool experience, and we'll go into that a little bit later. Right away, it was easy to tell that this was going to be very different from the action games I usually play, most notably when compared to the Devil May Cry series. While Devil May Cry is all about looking cool and defeating your enemies with creative and stylish combos while controlling a cocky, wisecracking devil hunter, Ninja Gaiden is about surviving brutal and borderline unfair enemy encounters while controlling a stoic, calculated, and efficient ninja. I also have to give this game massive props for its fully customizable button layout. I discovered this almost immediately after booting up the game for the first time, and fully took advantage of it. I mapped basic attack to Y, strong attack to left trigger, projectiles to X, block to B, and left jump on A. I'm sure that most of you action game enthusiasts will recognize this as the same face button layout that is present in the Devil May Cry games, and that's completely intentional. I've mentioned on numerous occasions that having the ability to change buttons to fit your personal preferences makes for a smoother transition into a new series, and this is a perfect example of that. I was able to take many of the skills acquired from my action game tenure and apply them to Ninja Gaiden, but at the end of the day, having the muscle memory to perform certain actions in a split-second decision is what truly makes or breaks these encounters for me. The combat is very satisfying. You have light and heavy attacks with dial combos that can be used for different situations, including, but not limited to, the famous Izuna drop, a technique forged by the ninja gods themselves and should be included in every action game. You also have a variety of projectiles for long-range combat, as well as access to magic abilities called ninpos. And something unique about this game is that you can use the essence dropped by enemies to gain money and recover health or ninpos, or you can absorb the essence with a charge attack in order to get an instant charge. It's something I had to get used to, but it really made the combat feel more exhilarating because you can choose in the moment whether you want to get your resources back or deal massive damage to your enemies. And having to make these split-second decisions in the middle of these brutal enemy encounters gave me that rush that makes these games so addicting. There's a nice variety of weapons to use, and you can use the blacksmith to upgrade them for better stats and more moves. While I mostly stuck with the dragon sword for its all-rounder usability, it was nice to experiment with different weapons in order to find the best option for a given situation. I especially had fun with the Dabilaro, or as I dubbed it, the Unga Bunga sword. I was honestly shocked with how much I was able to get away with when using this, especially with the amount of technical skill that was required when using any of the other weapons. This game being made in 2004 also has the unfortunate caveat of forcing you into a menu to switch out your weapons and use health items. If this wasn't the case, the combat would be opened up even more, and the brief pause in combat wouldn't feel as jarring. One of the things I didn't realize I would love as much as I did was the wall running. Obviously, it's integral for the platforming sections, but it is also incredibly useful during combat. Being able to run up the wall to avoid enemy attacks and retaliate with a sword slash is something else. Dante has something similar in DMC3 with his trickster style, but it is nowhere near as intricate and is used more for style than practicality. It is absolutely necessary to learn how to utilize the environments to your advantage, and I imagine that mastering this is crucial to beat the harder difficulties. Adding to this, the game gives you a general idea of how it wants you to play, but in typical hardcore gamer fashion, it does not hold your hand and will occasionally withhold information from you, such as how to deal with clashes from bosses and escaping command grabs. Speaking of command grabs, something that I discovered in my Ninja Gaiden journey is that I highly dislike being command grabbed by enemies and bosses. They come out insanely fast, are untechable, and will usually deal a metric ton of damage. The obvious solution is to roll out of the way, but because of how fast they come out, it felt like I had to predict when the grab would come out rather than react to it. Even then, being in a recovery animation after a big attack where I can still block but not roll meant that I would just get grabbed anyway. Soft lock-ons usually bother me, but it felt okay here for a good majority of the runtime. It mainly felt like an issue where there were multiple enemy types on screen that moved extremely fast, which meant that I would lose them if they went off screen where they could still hit you. That, combined with the awkward camera controls, is what makes something like the double horse fight at the beginning of the game so frustrating to deal with. Nothing makes me want to fling my controller across the room more than your character making an educated guess on which enemy it thinks you want to hit and getting screwed after it's completely wrong. On a similar note, the platforming in Ninja Gaiden is quite bizarre. When it works as intended, you feel like a total badass, but more often than not, the collision of the wall combined with Ryu wanting to run up every single wall in sight like a third grader on Smarties was driving me up a wall. And generally speaking, I don't mind having to do the walk of shame to retry a difficult boss fight, but a particular platforming section before the Bone Dragon boss made it so annoying. It was also strange to me that the game has a rating system, but doesn't have any rewards tied to them. Since there isn't a style meter, I had the impression that a higher score was given for efficiency in completing the level and enemy encounters as fast as possible, rather than extending your combos and varying the attacks. However, not having anything other than bragging rights gave me less motivation to get the higher rankings. The game also doesn't punish you in any way for using health items, so the only thing it's gonna hurt is your pride, and that's if you care about beating these games without them, like I do. It was a nice crush to take advantage of if I just really wanted to move on to the next section, but I was expecting a game that's known for its challenging difficulty to have harsher penalties for relying on optional items. The boss fights in this game are a very mixed bag and can be broken down into 3 different categories. The best fights in the game are when you're dueling a boss one-on-one, feeling out their attack patterns, figuring out when to strike, and making sure you don't get punished for being too overzealous. Mirai, Doku, and even the infamous Alma are all perfect examples of this formula. You have the Goliath-style bosses that are a nice change of pace, but can feel very repetitive because of the very specific, optimal way to beat them. And the worst fights in the game have to include standard enemies because the fights need to be more challenging or more interesting. And why they made this decision in a game with speedy enemies and a soft lock-on is beyond me. Enemy hitboxes are also a bit whack. They have the ability to dodge and roll to avoid your attacks with iframes, something that I know I'm not used to in my action games, but learn to accept as part of the challenge. I can best relate it to fighting another player in a fighting game, where we both have access to the same mechanics like invulnerable dragon punches, command throws that can be spammed, and fireball projectiles. However, an issue I kept running into was my attacks either getting blocked or just straight up ignored for no reason, even if there was a clear opening to hit the enemy. I was really surprised with the Resident Evil-esque / early DMC world design and puzzles, which I have been told was removed for Ninja Gaiden Sigma. And that's definitely a shame because it feels like the game challenged me in more ways than one because of this. Combat is obviously very important, but getting rid of the puzzles removes another crucial part of being an effective ninja, because I loved seeing that Ryu's training gave him more intelligence instead of just being dumbed down to a generic killing machine. The story of this game, unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, goes in one ear and out the other. There really isn't much about it that I remember besides the general plot points and a few character interactions. Ryu's a cool guy and all, but doesn't exactly do much to make himself a memorable protagonist. He's basically the opposite of Dante, being so serious that he stands out from the rest of the characters that actually have quirks, even if most of it is based off of attire. Speaking of weird quirks, why does Ryu turn into a bird? Has he been able to do this the whole time? And if so, why wasn't I allowed to turn into a bird and fly through the platforming sections DMC2 style? This is the one thing about this game that's bothered me since I saw it, and I'm still stuck on it. Despite my issues, I really enjoyed Ninja Gaiden Black, and I'm glad I finally had the excuse to give this series a try. I want to go back and play on the harder difficulties once I play through the other games. I'm also curious about playing the original release as well as Sigma, just so I can experience the changes myself. I'm gonna give Ninja Gaiden Black a B+. Let me know what you guys think about Ninja Gaiden Black down in the comments, and let me know which Ninja Gaiden game is currently your favorite. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this from me, you can subscribe and follow me on all of my other social media platforms, all of which house similar content that I have here on this channel. And I'd like to once again give a huge shout out to all of our YouTube members listed here on screen. If you want to be listed on my next video, plus get a bunch of other rewards, become a YouTube member today. And if you want to watch another video of mine, you can check it out over on this side of the screen over here. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.